welcome back to Fixing My Faith. It's been a few days since I've been online, but I've been busy. Where we live, we're on a farm, so we have our fall chores to get ready for the winter. And so that keeps us busy. But I haven't forgotten about you. I've been doing a lot of research, and I want to share a bit of that research with you. A few months ago when I started, it's only been about 3 months since I've been online, and 9 months in total since I started fixing my faith. And what I see today and what I seen when I started is two different things. And that's only 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I said, I kind of like the Jehovah's Witness Bible. It's not that bad, but I take that all back. I found out a lot of stuff. There's a lot of scriptures that are twisted, and we're going to cover that on upcoming videos. And it's a real train wreck. And when the Bible is changed and you can't trust it, and it's changed to suit the religion, then that's a problem. But today I just want to share a few things. 2 Timothy 3:16, we all know that scripture. It says all scriptures is breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped with every good work. So the New World Translation will say that all scriptures is inspired of God. So we agree with that. Then we go over to 1 Corinthians and verse 12, 13 and verse 12. Paul admitted, he said, now we see things imperfectly, because we're all imperfect, like puzzling reflections in a mirror. That's how Paul looked at it. So we don't see the clear picture. None of us do. Paul recognized that he did not see the clear picture, even though he wrote half of the New Testament. So how could the governing body claim to have the solid truth, the ultimate truth? But then Paul says, but then he says, and this is when Jesus comes, or when he dies, of course, we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God knows me completely. So even the Apostle Paul didn't know everything completely. So what I noticed from my research is most organizations out there don't claim to know everything perfectly. They say, well, this is how we interpret things, or this is how I believe in it because of these other scriptures. I like that, but the Jehovah's Witnesses do not do that. What they say is gospel. It's the only truth, nothing but the truth. So this should be a red warning, a red flag for any of us out there that are looking at religions. Because if we find a religion that say they have the ultimate truth, I would show them the scripture, ask them to explain it. But it's clear to me. So now I want to move forward. Ecclesiastes says there's a time for everything. So if all scripture is inspired, we're using it. It says there's a time for, in verse 8. Look at verse 8 right at the bottom. A time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. So as I look through other parts of the Bible, Romans chapter 13, it talks about supporting the governments. And King Solomon talked about war. Does that mean we can only use parts of the Bible? See, Jehovah's Witnesses use the Old Testament, but then they ignore this scripture. And if we didn't have war, well, then they say, well, what about the 10 Commandments? Well, they don't agree with the 10 Commandments, but I'm going to go there. The 10 Commandments talks about murder. Now, there's a difference between murder and war. So I'm doing more research on that, but the Bible is becoming more and more clear as we read it with an open mind. And the big thing in the 10 Commandments here, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God has given you. So I touched on this on lots of my other videos, but they teach that you don't have to listen to the 10 Commandments. In fact, if you go to JW.org, plug in 10 Commandments, go in there, it says they don't follow it. It says it right out clear. And why? Well, they don't believe that children have to honor their father or their mother if they're disfellowshipped or left the religion. They have to shun their parents, you see. So therefore, they don't have to listen to the 10 Commandments. the only part of the Bible that God delivered to his people personally. I think that would be an important part of the Bible to listen to. So let's move forward. Galatians 5, and we're looking at verse, where are we here? Galatians 5 and verse, there we are. All of Moses' teachings are summarized in a single statement: love your neighbor as you love yourself. But if you criticize and attack each other, be careful that you don't destroy each other. So all of Moses' teachings. So the whole law hangs on a single command: love. And that's what Galatians 5 and verse 14 says. So I think that's worth exploring, is love. What does love really mean? So as I go further exploring this in James chapter 1 and verse 26, it says, if you claim to be religious but don't control your tongue, you're fooling yourself and your religion is worthless. So when I think of Stephen Lett's lecture, September 22nd, I think he lost it a bit with his tongue. But anyways, that's just my personal opinion. But verse 27 says, pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you. So this is interesting. Caring for orphans and widows. Well, I know as a Jehovah's Witnesses, we didn't do that. We'd maybe place magazines with orphans and widows, but we had no program for helping orphans and widows or homeless or anybody for that matter. It was all about the preaching work, all about placing magazines, all about, did you get your time in? How much time did you get in last month? How many placements in the Watchtower and Wake did you get last month? That's all the religion is really about. It's a sales tool to sell magazines. It's a business. Now, I'm curious, I'm an ex-JW, and I want to follow the Bible, and I want to find a religion that's pure and genuine in the sight of God. So it means caring for orphans and widows. So I went into Google, and I just plugged that in. Which religions take care of orphans and widows in Canada? And I was amazed at all of the organizations out there taking care of orphans and widows. I had no idea. And it's none of the religions, by the way, that I could think of. It's empoweringwidows.com, Britannica.com, Christianity, Care for Widows and Orphans. Kids So Fine Gritty, Caring for Orphans and Widows, hands-on activity. Humanconcern.org, 3 rewards, excuse me, for supporting orphans in Islam. So I just kept going. There's so many organizations, and none of them are any religions. They're not Mormons or JWs or any of the religions I recognize, but there's a lot of organizations supporting orphans and widows, and a lot of Christian organizations doing that. And if you check into these further, they believe that Jesus equals truth. Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. And these religious organizations are not threatening at all. So James tells us what to do. It gives us the instructions. And Jehovah's Witnesses, the jw.org does not fit any of this. So my concluding remark is, well, what about this whole faithful and discreet slave? Well, I think if we revisit this is it's not a prophecy of what's going to happen. This is an illustration that Jesus gave. It's a parable. So first of all, he talks about no one knows that day and hour. And here we have Russell. His wife told him in 1870, I think you, Charles, are the faithful and discreet slave. And he said, well, let's say the Watchtower is. So they put it all in the Watchtower as a faithful and discreet slave. And this came from his wife. She thought it. You can look that up. But anyways, here he is planning the end times, Charles Russell, and 1914 is going to be the end of the world, or when Christ comes. But here it says, concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of the heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. So here Russell's reading this, getting out of the faithful slave. He's some big hero, but he ignores this part right in the same passage. In verse 44, I have it highlighted. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. So how can let be up there saying it's now, it's imminent, it's in tomorrow? How can you do that when it's right there? It's just blatant, right there in their face. So then, verse 45, who then is the faithful, wise servant, whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? So I did some research on that, and some of the people are saying Jesus, because God gave that over to Jesus to do. So there's different ways of looking at this, but it's a parable. It's not a prophecy. It's nothing to do with what's coming. And they really read into this. So then it goes on to say, blessed is the servant whom his master will find doing so when he comes. So what is he blessed for, and doing what? Well, we go back to James, looking after orphans and widows, which the Jehovah's Witnesses don't do. They don't even help the homeless. They're just out there on the streets peddling magazines and literature, and they're asking for contributions. So that's what they do. But here, the master of the servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, an hour he does not know, and he will cut him into pieces. So this is the parable. This is what it's talking about. I look at this and I think I'm the faithful slave of my own household. And it's my responsibility, and I'm one of Christ's brothers. So why would I not have that responsibility over my household, looking after getting the proper spiritual food? So, there's different ways of looking at it, but it's certainly not the Jehovah's Witness. So thanks again, friends, for sticking with me. And until next time, live your life with love. Bye for now.